Discover expert insights on personal injury law with David Rosenthal.
Hello and welcome. Lawyer David Rosenthal and I are continuing our discussion about personal injury law. His firm, Rosenthal Law, has offices in Sacramento and Roseville, California. Dave, good to talk to you again.
Thank you, Nancy, for having me back. I'm enjoying it.
Earlier, we were talking about dog bites, and I came across this statistic that illustrates quite a problem. It says in California in 2022, dog bites led to more than 48,000 emergency room visits in California. Now, that's the highest rate in almost 18 years. Clearly, there's a problem.
Oh, I don't think there's any question. In recent times, not only is the population of California keep growing, but our affinity for dogs in California is, almost everybody's got a dog or several dogs. And so in recent times, it seems like there's a more of a ethic of let's go out in public with our dogs. So whether it be dog parks or, walks in the neighborhood or just even in the grocery store or flying on the plane, it just seems like everywhere you go, you see dogs. So obviously there's been a increase in contact at that point between people and dogs. The thing about dogs is that some dogs are just mean, but even dogs that aren't always mean sometimes are unpredictable. And when they go after somebody, when they bite somebody, they do have the potential to cause some serious damage.
Now I understand that California has a very specific bite laws. What do we need to know about those laws?
Sure. So in terms of civil liability, is, somebody's responsible for causing an injury, therefore they have to pay for damages. So we have a dog bite law in California that says that if you own a dog and that dog bites somebody, you are responsible for the damages. You're responsible for the harm. So if you're walking down the street, you might have your dog on a leash, but you're walking down the street, someone's coming the other way, your dog takes a bite, then you're responsible for that injury. Now, there can be mitigating factors. So in California, we have what's called a comparative fault state, pure comparative fault. That means that, if you go to court and the jury has to decide who's at fault for a certain incident, they can ascribe a percentage of fault to more than one person. So let's just say there's a dog, you own the dog, and but the other person comes up out of nowhere, comes up to you, you're a total stranger, and starts, teasing the dog or something like that, provokes the dog, and the dog bites him. There could certainly be some fault that would be attributed to the other individual. But, the fundamental kind of black letter law is that if you own a dog and that dog bites somebody, you're civilly liable for the damages.
Some dog bites can clearly be life-altering.
I've seen some pretty bad dog bites. I've seen arms that have been torn to pieces that cause nerve damage. That's permanent. Scarring, that's permanent. Emotional trauma that oftentimes is long lasting, if not permanent. So yeah, dog encounters can be very, very traumatizing.
You talked about the emotional trauma, especially in children. Can that be taken into account as well?
Absolutely. In fact, that's a big component in dog bite cases because, first of all, the damages that you recover include, I think we've talked about this in the prior podcast, but your medical expenses, your loss of income, if there is any. We see a lot of Amazon drivers, people that are, obviously delivery of packages to homes is a big has grown in recent years as well. So we're starting to see a lot of situations where, people are coming to deliver packages and they're getting bit. So loss of income, and then the emotional trauma, the emotional harm, pain and suffering damages. And pain and suffering includes the emotional distress that is associated with any type of traumatic event. So including a dog bite situation, a lot of time kids are very scared of dogs after an event like this. Even adults can have trauma like this and then be, they're scared of dogs. It can be paralyzing because the dogs are everywhere. So, next thing you know, you're every time you see a dog coming the other way, you're walking across the street. Or, and in some cases, it's actually caused PTSD and, a diagnosis from a medical professional of post-traumatic stress disorder because, they have nightmares and residual emotional impact from an attack. And, of course, every case is different, but that's a real thing.
Now, what should be documented when it comes to dog bites?
Depends on the case, but a lot of times there is an animal control report. If the animal controls come out and investigated, it's different from, depending on where you are. If they have a specific animal control unit that's separate from, say, like the police department or the sheriff's department. But anytime you've been involved in an incident, it is important that you report it. Report it to the appropriate agency so that there's an investigation. Especially if you don't know the individual that owns the dog. Typically animal control will go out, make contact with that person. In some cases, if the dog is vicious, a lot of times these dogs, it's not the first time the dog's bit somebody. They've bitten people in the past. They have a history, a track record of that. And you can't have dogs that are like that just roaming around or even walking around without appropriate kind of safety measures. So animal control can go out. If they feel the dog is vicious, they may quarantine that dog. They're going to also find out information about vaccinations. Has the dog had his rabies vaccination? You don't want to have a situation where you're bit, you've been injured, and nobody knows if they've got their rabies vaccine, because the next thing you know, you're going to be having a rabies injection yourself, so that there's no problem there. That's the typical investigation. Other follow-up investigation is, we got to find out if this person owns a home, if they've got renter's insurance, if they're renting an apartment, or if they've got a home that they've got homeowner's insurance, and that's where we make contact because that's where the compensation is going to be coming from if there's when there's an injury. Recovery
can take time. Sometimes scars can heal, but sometimes they don't.
Scars are, again, very unique to the individual. So typically what you'll hear from plastic surgeons is scars take up to a year to kind of fully reach their permanent state. So a lot of times we have to wait, for that year to occur to kind of get a good picture of what it's going to look like at the end of the healing period. Sometimes we see a lot of people have numbness, some pain, or sensitivity around the scar area. As I've said, a lot of times the bites go deeper than just the surface of the skin, and they cause nerve damage in the area of the bite. That's not an unusual occurrence. We can have a plastic surgeon assess the scar. They can provide opinions about, is there something that you can do to make the scar look a little better? Sometimes there's injections, or there can actually be a scar revision surgery that can be done to change the appearance of the scar if that's a real sensitive thing for the individual that's been bitten. But otherwise, some people just decide to live with the scar, and if it's on a leg, that's going to be exposed when you go out in shorts, or if it's on an arm, and everybody's different in terms of how they feel about that, if that's an embarrassing thing to have that scar or not.
Now, there are occasions when the person injured might actually know the dog owner or be friends. It might be a neighbor. How do you handle those complexities when people are like, oh, do I really want to sue my neighbor?
Yeah, that can be a very, very sensitive situation. So the different scenarios that I've seen have kind of run the gamut. So I've had situations where the neighbor feels really bad about the fact that somebody's been injured. By the way, a lot of times, a lot of these incidents occur when you're walking or when a person is walking their dog. So they're walking their dog in the neighborhood. I've had, cases where people are walking their dog in the neighborhood. the dog from the house two doors down sees that dog and just comes out and attacks the dog, and then ends up biting the owner as well. So the only reason I bring that up is because it seems natural for. It's funny, people feel like, oh, my dog bit your dog, and you take your dog to the vet. I feel responsible. Let's make sure the vet bills are taken care of. Well, there's also another part of that, which is, okay, you're injured and you're going to the doctor. And so anyway, getting back to the point, some people are like, I want you to be taken care of. I want you to get compensation for what happened. I feel really bad. I have homeowners insurance to cover this liability. Make a claim. Okay, so at that point, you feel a little bit at ease or a little bit better about the idea of making a claim that's not going to cause a rift with you and your neighbor. Other times, some people don't like the idea of somebody making a claim against their insurance or being sued, and they're not going to like that. And that's that's a decision that each person has to make in terms of what they want to do. Do they still want to pursue this? The first level is, again, just typically notifying their insurance, their homeowner's insurance, that there's a claim that's pending. A lot of times the claim is settled with the insurance company, and that's the end of it. There is no lawsuit. That's one possibility. We get into a situation where the insurance company is not being fair. They're not going to settle and pay what's appropriate for compensation. Now we're talking about, well, our next step has to be to sue the neighbor. These are decisions that, as far as I'm concerned as the lawyer, that they're the client's decisions. I don't make these decisions for them. I tell them, I inform them what we're doing at each step of the way, and ultimately it's their call, it's their decision. If they don't want to sue their neighbor, we're not going to sue their neighbor. So I present the the rights and the scenarios, the different avenues that we can go down, and then it's up to the client to decide what's best for them in the situation.
Now, what attracted you to personal injury law?
Well, I think, the first thing is I started from the point of I want to help people. I really, I don't want to, necessarily represent a big corporation. Certainly when I started out, I did do some work, when I very first started, I clerked at law firms that were doing this from the other side where, hey, we're representing the insurance companies and we're doing the legal work for the insurance companies, which is defending these types of cases. And I really didn't like that. I think that the idea is that I feel it's just and fair that somebody be compensated in these scenarios, in these situations, and I feel really good about being able to bring that about and just doing an exceptional job and providing a service that I can be proud of and that the clients really appreciate.
Can you share an experience where you may have seen or felt your career sort of come full circle when you managed to win and get a proper judgment or settlement?
Of course, I've been through cases where we actually had to go to a jury trial, and the insurance companies, they'll fight you, and they're not going to pay, they're not going to acknowledge that they are responsible for causing the harm. Even then, they're going to accuse the person that has these injuries, that's been through all of this medical care, had all of this interference with their quality of life. They're going to say, well, they're exaggerating. It's due to something else. It's not what we did. So I think, when you go through a jury trial and they deny responsibility, they deny or accountability for the harm that they've caused, and the jury comes back and says, no, you are responsible and you caused this harm, and we're going to compensate this person for what happened, and they provide that compensation, that is really probably the most rewarding experience of all. I will say that, for the client's sake, that's, we don't want them to have to go through that. I mean, that's something that it's a long process to get to trial. It's a stressful experience to go through a trial where you're having 12 people, 12 jurors judge your case, and you're having an insurance company with their lawyers trying to say, doing everything they can to say, no, it's not what they say it is. It's not. They weren't hurt. They weren't hurt in this incident. They were not hurt as bad. So it's a lot to go through. But ultimately, at the end, the reward, I think, is very significant at that stage when you've kind of gone through all that, endured it, and you persevere and you win the case.
I'm sure you've had cases where the amount of money is going to be needed for, care for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. I've had, again, I've handled every type of case you can imagine, including very, very serious catastrophic injury cases, very sad cases, where this individual is going to need 24-hour care for the rest of their life. Okay, they're in a home, they've had a major traumatic brain injury, they can't function on their own. They have to be fed, they have to be bathed, they rely on somebody else to go outside and sit outside for a while, enjoy the outdoors. They need 24-hour care, and the cost of that is astronomical. You have to have experts that are able to tell us these are all the components of the care that's required for this individual. This is the cost that's for each element, every component of that care, and this is going to go out for the rest of their life, for 20, 30 years. And so that's going to be millions of dollars. And then, so you're going to ultimately, you're not going to win this case. You're not going to do anything for this client unless you get millions of dollars. That's going to set that person up with care for the rest of their life. So I've had those kinds of cases. And that is, talk about rewarding at the end of the day when you've, gone through the gamut, gone through every defense every obstacle that they've laid out to you getting that money for that individual. At the end of the day, you get that money. Very rewarding. And
what is the best way for listeners to reach you?
One way, obviously, is old-fashioned. Pick up the phone. Our phone number, 916-774-7200. If I'm available, I'm going to talk to you. And if I'm not available at that particular moment, then I can get back to you and talk to you personally about your case. You can actually email me if you feel that's a better way. It's Dave at Rosenthal Injury Law, all spelled out, no breaks, .com. So Dave at RosenthalInjuryLaw.com. If you want to email me directly, more than happy to take communication that way. Go to our website to find more information. www.rosenthalinjurylaw.com. There's a chat function on that that comes up on that if you feel like that's the best way. So multiple ways.
David, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Nancy.
David Rosenthal is a personal injury lawyer. His firm, Rosenthal Law, has 2 locations, one in Sacramento and one in Roseville, California. Please remember to like and subscribe.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.